Hello, nonprofit leaders. I'm Sarah Olivieri, your host, and this podcast is here to assist people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders, make a bigger impact with insights, tips, and lessons learned from nonprofit leaders and experts. Having been an executive director, a board member, and now a consultant and coach, I truly understand the challenges you face. And that's why I'm here. I'm all about working smarter, not harder, so you can make a bigger impact without the burnout. And so is our sponsor, DonorBox. DonorBox isn't just a suite of helpful fundraising tools, it's a partner that helps you raise more money and supports you in retaining your donors. I love their forward-thinking approach. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. And don't forget to sign up for the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership newsletter, where you'll get bite-sized, actionable tips just for nonprofit leaders like you, delivered weekly to your inbox. Sign up at inspirednonprofitleadership.com/sign up. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. My guest for this episode is Dr. Renee Rubin Ross, who has been a guest here before. She is a recognized leader on board and organizational development and strategy and the founder of the Ross Collective. And she has a new book, Inclusive Strategic Planning for Nonprofits, a 5-step process to expand energy, alignment, and opportunity. 3 of my favorite things. Dr. Ross guides leaders and organizations in strategic planning and governance processes that deepen social change, racial justice, and community strengths. She also directs the Cal State University East Bay Nonprofit Management Certificate Program and teaches strategic planning and board governance for the program as well. Welcome back, Renee. It's such a pleasure to have
Thank
you.
you. Great to be here and great to talk
Yeah,
about inclusive strategic planning and all kinds of good stuff.
I
Yeah.
love it. Before we dive into those things, for folks who are just getting to know you, would you tell us just a little bit about yourself personally?
Sure. So we, the Ross Collective, are based in Northern California. And I started off as a consultant around 10 years ago and then discovered facilitation. And I have a long time background in education. And I just found that I really loved bringing out lots of voices in the room and trained in top technology of participation, facilitation. And yeah, it's so exciting every single time to kind of see people talk about what they want to happen and really bring it to life. So for me, it never gets boring. It's kind of a funny thing. I think, well, you could do this a lot and maybe get tired of it, but I find it really, really energizing.
I love it. Well, speaking of
Hmm.
energizing, I want to talk about like the subtitle of your book, a 5-step process. Well, we can talk about the process in a moment, but why did you name it Expand Energy, Alignment, and Opportunity? What are important about
Ooh.
those things to you? Because those really grab me as things that are really
Hmm.
important that don't get talked about a lot.
Hmm. Thank you for the question. And I will say that as I was writing the book, I did an inclusive process of having beta readers, which I got about 100 people that signed up, and I got about 30 people who read the manuscript and asked questions along the way. And people said things like, "What do you mean by inclusive?" Okay.
Mhm.
And inclusive, and I had to really think, well, what do I mean by inclusive? In the end, it was like, okay, there's a lot of processes that talk about just the tools, but I really wanted to focus on the who and to say who is involved in building the vision and building the goals really matters.
Yeah.
And you want to make that visible and explicit and talk about and focus on communication along the way. So when you do that, then you get those really great results of, wow, someone asked me what my goals are for our work, and I feel a sense of energy about putting those goals into motion. There is alignment across the staff and board team. And we've seen a lot of opportunities both open up for our nonprofit clients, both funding, as well as just, figuring out what they want to do next and making it happen.
Yeah, I love that. I like thinking about, I was thinking about my own understanding of the word inclusive. And as I told you before we hit record, I just came off this conversation with a client about bias and racism and inclusivity and systems change at the community level. And I feel the way I think a lot of people feel about inclusion, but sometimes I think have come to it from different angles. And I'm curious, how you feel about that. Like, I, and one of the things that this client and I were talking about is there's the part like what you believe that's important.
Hmm.
But then
Hmm.
there's this
Hmm.
piece where we have to make, I call it a guiding principle, like the action statement version of it. So, like, there are a lot of like values or beliefs that I have around, including people because they have a
Uh-huh.
right to participate in, designing their own future or their own wellness or
Hmm.
their own life,
Hmm.
a right to self-determination. But the piece that makes it actionable for me is I have certain human rights that I believe in, and the action piece is I've decided to actively uphold them
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
my work. So
Hmm.
thinking about like how do we make and inclusion is getting to like it's kind of an action word, but so often I think we get kind of stuck into our beliefs without turning them
Hmm.
into action. And so much to me about strategic planning is making stuff actionable. So I want to just ask you about that thinking around
Yeah,
inclusion
yeah.
and
And
actionable and
I
belief.
guess I'm gonna so one of the frameworks that I share in the book is a visual of who is participating in planning. So I have these concentric circles. In the center is the dividers. And those are the group that, is really making those final decisions, but the larger group we call the builders.
Mm,
And that is often, if it's a small organization, it might be a working board, it might be the whole staff or a lot of the staff. And the idea that those people are included basically, that they get to build the vision for the organization and they get to create the goals that they're going to carry out.
mhm.
Um, the opposite of, I mean, I have a story in my book about this woman. I call her Nancy. That's not her name, but she was telling me in my strategic planning class, she was talking about how she and her co-director sat in a room for 2 days and wrote the strategic plan. And it's like she's like, "Oh, I thought we were being inclusive." I'm like, "Okay, no, I don't think you were." And then she kind of wondered why no one seemed to really understand it.
Mm.
Um, so I think that one of the things about this is that it's process, like it's actually seeing how you build these different pieces along the way, how you build your vision, how you build your mission, and people seeing, yeah, I was part of that process, as well as a product, like
Yeah.
something that you have in the end that you're gonna then, share with your community. But both of those are important. Now, I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't I didn't call this book consensus strategic planning because I do think that, it's okay to say, well, we're not, it's not 20 of us who are all gonna make the final decision. That's when things actually get really hard. And
Yeah.
different cultures, different organizations have different cultures.
Yeah.
But this process kind of goes back and forth between, sometimes where there's a couple of people who are gonna, or finish the plan, but then a lot of times, like a day and a half long strategic planning retreat, where a large group, I mean, we've done up to 60 or 70 people are weighing in on the future of the organization.
Yeah. You make me think about a couple things that are really like effective about
Hmm.
inclusive planning. One of them you said like cuz people have to understand it and have to have buy-in and carry it
Mm.
out. It
Hmm.
makes me think
Hmm.
about I was having a conversation with somebody about like effective coaching or consulting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
whether or not you're an
Yeah.
exterior coach or
Uh-huh.
you're a leader coach in your
Uh-huh.
organization, is that, kind of newer coaches are thinking like, oh, well, I know the answer and I can tell people the answer. And then once you get more experience, you realize it doesn't matter. It makes it a little easier that I know the end destination but actually the work is, and that's why I merge coaching and consulting, because I think the
Yeah.
great work is to
Uh-huh.
get everybody to take the journey. Like you took 2 seconds to do the
Right.
journey. They're
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
need a couple hours or a couple days, right? But if
Yes.
you
And
tell
but
them the answer, if you just be like, up and now we're at the destination, they're like, no, we're not. Like, we're not there with you.
yes, and thank you so much for saying that. And I mean, I think I'm very interested in, given my background in education, how do different people learn? How do different
Yeah.
people process information? And it's so true. You know, there's somebody that will just say, oh, instantly say, okay, I understand what you're doing. And then somebody else is like, can you spell out A, B, C? And it's like, oh my gosh, wow.
Yeah.
And when, you know, with the feedback we have gotten when we've led some of these processes is people really appreciate having that narrative of even, okay, we're going to review. You know, we first, our group worked on this, you know, we did a SWOT together. And then
Mhm.
from there, we built the vision. And then from there, we did the mission work. And now we've done some strategies. Now we've done some goals. Yeah. And just like really spelling it out, people have also put that into their strategic plan
Yeah.
in terms of, you know, here's the story of what happened so that people who weren't in the room where it happened could, you know, could catch up and understand as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think that story component is such a powerful way to use a story because it brings helps them come along the journey. Otherwise,
Hmm.
you see
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
situation where people are like, "Well, but did you consider this or did you consider that?" And like,
Yeah.
and then they're doubting the
Yes. Yeah.
decision. Often
Hmm.
actually makes me
Hmm.
think outside of strategic planning, I often give executive directors the advice when communicating with their boards to almost more importantly on telling them what you decided to do is to tell them how you decided,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
once they're
Hmm.
confident that
Hmm.
you used a
Hmm.
thorough good process to decide, they don't even care what you decided at that point. Like you could tell them anything as long as they're convinced that the process that went into the
Yeah.
decision making was quality.
Right. Thank you. And, you know, and in this, I mentioned we have deciders, we have builders, and the third circle is sharers, right? And so
Mhm.
that there is a component of this process where we do encourage people to reach out to partners, community members, donors, you know, to do some information gathering
Yeah.
before they, you know, before they start to build, to do their visioning work. And also to, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to collect information. It's also just to bring people along in the process. But I think having that clarity of who is participating and what are their roles really does help to for people to feel good about the final product.
Yeah. I want to ask you, it's still kind of thinking about the inclusion piece, I guess, but a concept that has served me very well is that of skin in the game. I'm a big fan
Mm.
of what's his
Mm-hmm.
name, Nicholas Nassim Taleb, who wrote a book
Mm.
called Skin in the Game. And it's this
Mm-hmm.
the concept or the belief is that people who experience the positive or negative effects of a decision are likely to make
Mm-hmm.
better decisions about what to do
Mm-hmm.
than people who are totally
Yeah.
divorced
Yeah.
from suffering the consequences or reaping the benefits of their
Mm-hmm.
decision.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure that plays a role in your thinking around inclusion and who's at the table, but I'd love to hear kind of any deeper thoughts about how the people who have to carry out the plan and
Yeah.
experience the
Yeah.
benefits, hopefully, of the plan.
So I think like it's everybody comes, what's fascinating is everybody comes in with a different perspective. So I'm thinking about an organization we worked with last year where the ED was thinking about, you know, funding, of course, as you might imagine. And then there were some people on the staff, this is an education program, some people on the staff wanted to expand to for this organization to work with other grades. I think the ED felt concerned that that was going too far. And so when they all got in the room and they kind of talked about some of the pluses and minuses and what did they actually have the capacity to do, it made the decision, which was, okay, we're going to continue to focus on the age range that we're already working with, a lot clearer. But it was actually having the conversation and for people to start to see, okay, this person isn't just being mean or, you know, trying to cut me off or you know, tell me what to do, but they have a rationale for, for why, for how these kinds of decisions are made. So I think that even something like this, we do this kind of interactive activity where we say, what are the strengths, what are the challenges, and what are some opportunities, kind of like a SWOT,
Yep.
and people sit together. And what tends to happen is um, people who have been on the staff for 10 years are sitting there with somebody who joined 3 months ago. And you kind of get the sharing of, well, what has this person learned that I don't know yet, but I'm trying to catch on, and so, and then what are some ideas that this new person sees that maybe I'm a little stuck in my ways. So there's really this nice balance and learning from each other. And I think that's, again, there's so many energizing aspects of bringing out a lot of voices.
Yeah, yeah. I love that example you shared, right? There's always an opportunity, whether you're new, there's an opportunity
Yeah,
to be
yeah, yeah,
beneficial, or whether you've been
yeah.
there a long time, there's
Uh-huh.
everyone's perspective brings an opportunity to improve the input going in.
Hmm.
I want to shift gears a little and ask you a little bit about why you wrote this book. I mean, and there's plenty of resources and books on strategic planning. I mean, I have, would say like there's definitely room for improvement.
Yeah.
So, not to question you in judgment, but to question like what drove you to actually produce a book? Because it's a lot of work to
It's true.
generate
It
a
is a lot
book.
of work. Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
probably had a good reason. And where do you hope
hmm.
that it lives in
Okay.
what kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
place
yeah.
does it take in the realm of
So so I've been blogging, and I send out my blog twice a month from the Ross Collective. We have a list of around 1,500 subscribers now. And I always get a lot of really good feedback on my blog. And I was like, all right, I'm, writing this blog, and I have this process. It's working with a lot of clients. I have a class that I teach on strategic planning. People are really interested. And it seems like I could make this into a book. And originally, like, I felt like, oh my gosh, there's so much to explain to our clients that it would just be helpful if I could send them the book, and then they could have an explanation of what they're going to experience, because there is a big learning curve with strategic planning. So as I started writing it, then what happened was, once I had a draft and I knew I had written about these 5 steps of planning, I knew that that was kind of the framework, and I created the manuscript and started to have these beta readers, and people gave me really, really good feedback. They, somebody like who is an executive director said early on, well, this is good if you want to just send it to your clients. But if you want to send it to, the world out there, people who don't know you and are not going to work with you, it's got some work. And I was like, ouch, okay. And I really thought about it, and I thought, wait a minute. Okay, if I'm just going to send it to my client, like our potential clients, not a lot of books, and so I was like, yeah, the methods. I mean, I teach a class, so I'm sharing how to do this. If people want to work with us, that's great. Not everybody does. Not everybody has the funds or the time, or they might not be geographically close by. These methods can be used by a lot of people. So I really shifted the tone to be much more about how people can do this on their own.
Hmm.
And yeah, and then I continued to get feedback, and kind of going back to this idea of all these different perspectives. People asked for things that I didn't like. People said, well, you need to put all the plans for what to prep for the strategic planning retreat. And I was like, okay. I mean, for me, that was something that I thought I totally have locked in our consulting work. And I don't, it's kind of on autopilot now. But of
Yeah.
course, if somebody's just doing this for the first time, they might want to know, you might want to have a checklist for that retreat.
Yeah.
So the book became so much better because of these 30 people who read it in different ways, and gave me they weren't always, they had a lot of positive things to say, but they definitely, it was a conversation, and they
Yeah.
challenged me. And I think the final product, I feel very pleased. I think I've already have gotten a lot of good feedback from some early readers, so it feels good.
Yeah, I love it. And where do you feel the book, like who do you hope is reading it? And,
Hmm.
why might they read
Ah,
this one over
yeah,
another
yeah,
one?
yeah.
Where does it live in that world?
Yeah. And yes, thank you for the question. I also have a couple of books on strategic planning, and but they don't talk about inclusion. It's
Mm,
like there's some kind of thing like it doesn't really matter who's there. And it's
yeah.
like that is wrong. That is wrong. It actually matters.
A
So those
lot.
books are, yes, very much. And who you're going to have in the room is critical to how good your plan's going to be. Right.
Yeah.
And that's why so yeah, so this there is a we I do go through the steps, but the steps that we use. I also talk a lot about how, being thoughtful in the design of who is participating in planning. And that's what's missing
Yeah.
from what's currently out there. Because yeah, we might have some of those same books. There's some great ones. There's some great ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to ask you from your perspective, what is a strategic plan? Because
What is a should.
I have seen a lot of strategic plans. I do strategic planning in a rather unorthodox way. And I realize that, like, what one person thinks is in a strategic plan is not what somebody else necessarily thinks. So let's, take a chapter
Well,
of not
well,
assuming things.
well, it's funny. You mentioned that because I did have this editor who was very good at things that like capitalization. And so there was this question around when can you capitalize? Sorry, now we're kind of geeking out on this. When can you capitalize strategic
Yeah.
plan? It's when you're talking about a formal document. In the with the clients we work with, that formal document will always have your mission, vision, strategies, and goals. Okay. Sometimes it has some other things like a description of a narrative of how it was developed. Sometimes it has some background information on the org, but those are kind of the minimum components. Sometimes people have put their values in there.
Yeah.
And the idea is that, as I said, process and product. So it's not just we put something on paper, but again, it kind of goes back to who's the we, and let's include that in that
Mm.
document as
Yeah.
well.
Who is
Yeah.
planning? And
Mm-hmm.
then when you talk about strategies and goals,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
ask this so genuinely because I think people use those words, strategies, goals, outcomes,
Uh-huh.
objectives.
Yeah.
Without, so
Hmm.
how do you, like, what in your mind, like, how do you find
Mm-hmm.
what's the difference between a strategy and a goal, and how do you define each?
So I personally will call strategies are kind of these general areas and that of your work. Usually for organizations, there's 3 to 5, not much more than that. And then goals, we're doing 3-year strategies, and then we're doing 3-year goals and 1-year goals. So goals are much more. Sometimes people do talk about SMART goals, that they are specific, measurable, time-bound, relevant, achievable.
Actionable, yeah, achievable or
Um,
actionable. Yep.
yeah, actionable, achievable. And I do talk about that in the book because some of the goals are not measurable. It really depends. You
Hmm.
don't always go into a 3-year plan knowing how many. If you're saying we're going to hire X number of staff, you might know, you might not know. If you're
Yeah.
saying we're going to raise this amount of money, you might have a number in mind or not.
Yeah.
But people do want a way of saying at the end of our 3 years, some kind of dashboard. What did we, in a very simple way, did we accomplish this goal or not? And I think if they're very vague and you can't answer that question, then you need to hone your goal a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, in the book, I mean, one of the things that I do, and both in our work and in the book, is it's really helpful for people to see samples and examples. So we share a lot of those with our clients, and there are many sample strategies, sample goals in the book, and you can start to see, well, how what makes sense. How can these, what kind of statement is a helpful format for these different
Yeah.
pieces.
I love it. So we've come all this way. We haven't talked about the 5 steps, and I hope people will go to the book and read them. But will you just give us kind of high level quickly, what are the 5 steps?
Oh my gosh. Okay, and I better remember them. Yeah.
Wait,
So,
it is
yeah.
totally fair. You get all clear. You say it's a 5-step process, right? It probably could have been a
No, I
7-step
know. I know.
process or a
Okay, I'm
3-step
looking at, oh my
process.
gosh, I'm looking at my diagram. No, so kickoff, and
Kick
that's,
off.
starting it off, designing the process, discovery, which is the data collection and learning, and then you go into prioritization, which is building your vision. What do we want to see in place in the next 3 years as a
Yeah.
result of our actions? And then you go into planning, which is building your goals in more depth. And last step is implementation. So, and that's really where you get to operationalizing what you have in your
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah, that's so important. You mentioned that in a strategic plan, you typically in that document are having mission and vision. How
Hmm.
much do you
Hmm.
think it's helpful in that strategic planning process to update a vision or revisit the mission? Or is that
Yeah,
better
yeah.
done
Uh-huh.
separately?
Uh-huh, uh-huh. So the order that we do it is we do a workshop. We always do a workshop on a practical vision, which is a
Mhm.
3-year vision, not a 10-year vision or aspirational one. So we always do that because, and that kind of becomes the anchor for everything
Mhm.
else. What do we want to see in place? And then the next question is, how are we going to get there? And that's how you create your strategies. In terms of the mission statement, we always look at the mission statement and just read it out loud and say, how does it strike you? And it really depends on the organization. Sometimes people will say, we just worked on this last year. We don't need to do it, work on it now, or we have a few words and we're going to do some small changes. Just out of honor, out of like honoring the organization's work, it is valuable to have that as part of the process, but we are conscious of not getting into 20 people or 50 people, wordsmithing, because that can get very long, let's
That's
say.
right. Oh, I have been there. I tell folks like, listen, your mission statement, I like to call it like your North
Hmm.
Star goal. It does
Hmm.
not need to be
Hmm.
part of your marketing. And if the words don't come to you like within a few
Hmm.
seconds or a few minutes,
Hmm.
that's what
Hmm.
copywriters are for, right? Like
Oh,
they're
yeah.
great with words. Like we don't need
Yeah.
to like wordsmith our mission
Uh-huh.
statements to death. We just need them to be clear so that when we ask, is this mission aligned? It's easy to
Hmm.
say, yes, it is, or no, it isn't, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, and like I mean it's so funny because I remember a long time ago I went to this nonprofit, an office, like a physical office, and there was this thing on the wall, and it was their mission statement.
mm.
And I thought that was I'm not sure that that was actually what, because I think I asked someone about it, and they said, no, we don't actually do that anymore. But I think the image of, yes, you could put this on the wall, whatever wall you have. It might be a virtual wall these days. And then you could look at it and you could say, yes, we are doing that every day. And
Yeah,
having that clarity.
yeah,
The other thing that happens is words change over time.
yeah,
And so sometimes we will work with organizations and they'll realize that the thing they came up with 10 years ago doesn't fit what
yeah,
they're, how this work is being talked about now.
yeah, yeah. I think that's really helpful. I want to ask you about visions because it's really fun to talk, for me at least, to talk with someone who thinks a lot about strategic planning and how to do it well. I know there is an art for those listening, there
Hmm.
is an art
Hmm.
to helping people generate a vision of the future. And because there's a
Mm.
lot of like psychological roadblock. I think especially in like if you go to entrepreneurs, they're like, woo, it's so big. And you're like, all right, let's
Hmm.
rein it in a little. But if you go to nonprofit leaders, they're often so overwhelmed. Like it's almost
Yeah.
like you have to give them
Yeah.
permission to dream a
Hmm.
little bigger. Because they're like, I
Hmm.
just wish we had enough money to make payroll every month. They're like, well, maybe
Hmm.
we could get a little bolder than that. So, what are some of the questions or approaches or strategies you've learned over the years that help people come to a 3-year vision that's
Yeah. Yeah.
meaningful
Yeah.
and is the
Yeah.
right amount of bold
Hmm.
and
Right.
realistic?
So we do a very specific consensus workshop, which is based on top. technology participation, facilitation. But I think I appreciate what you're saying. I mean, I think that some of it is being in a place where you have that spaciousness
Mm.
to do visioning, and that I have a story in the book about many years ago when I really didn't know what I was doing, and I had this meeting, and this guy was like, "Where do you see yourself in 10 years?" And I had just like had a bumpy job transition, like I was sort of like, I have no idea, so oh my gosh, where do I see myself? Like, I don't even know what's happening tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so, yes,
What for
yes.
vision is not really a helpful visioning
Oh my
question.
gosh. I mean, and I don't know, our college and high school kids are being like, what's your vision? Like, there is just so much. So I think of so what we try to do with nonprofits. First of all, can you be somewhere where you're not going to be pulled for the day on this strategic planning retreat, where you're not going to be pulled in to your work? Can no meetings, close down your calendar, order the food ahead of time, kind of get yourself in a space. It might be your office or somewhere else, depending on, how people plan these things. But to really get into a space where you're away from everything. And then we do a little bit of a guided meditation
Hmm.
beforehand, which is like it's 3 years from now and you're celebrating the work that your organization has done, and there's this party, and what are you celebrating? And to start to think of it that way,
Yeah.
which lots of good stuff comes out of it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think that's a great. I'm a collector of what I call strategic
Mhm.
questions, and I love
Mhm.
that. Like, what
Mhm.
are you celebrating? It's
Mhm.
reminiscent of the famous Dan Sullivan question. I don't know if you come across that, but it's very like goes a little deeper. But like, giving what I hear is so key in that way you phrase that is you're giving people something like visual, tangible
Mhm.
to put
Mhm.
themselves like physically in their
Mhm.
minds in the future and then ask them to look
Yeah.
backwards on the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah. And in these times, 3 years is enough.
Yeah. It's like a lifetime.
Yeah. I think like when you start to say, what do you envision, 10 years from now, is like, I mean, that starts to get hard.
Yeah.
But 3 years you can do it. And people, this again, it's a collaborative process, so people are talking to one another. No one person is responsible for the vision. It's actually
Yeah.
people come together to build it. I detail the process in the book.
Great.
But yeah, we've seen it work. It does work many, many times. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, yeah. And I think too, that process, talking about like going back to where we started, that process of
Hmm.
inclusion, right? When
Yeah.
people vision
Hmm.
together, to me, like,
Hmm.
what I said, I really, resonated with alignment and energy, right? Like,
Hmm.
to me,
Hmm.
the visioning activity to me unlocks capacity by bringing the participants into alignment about where
Mm.
we're going.
Hmm.
And when your
Hmm.
team is aligned, you have more capacity because you have more energy to do
Right.
things.
Thank you. Yes, and I think the way that I understand this, it has to do with motivation,
Mm,
right? So if you feel like, wow, someone consulted me on this, I got to weigh in, so I feel more motivated. I think that's, I feel
yeah.
motivated to put this into action. So that's
Yeah.
kind of the capacity piece versus someone just handed this to me and I don't know where it came from, like yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. All right. Well, we need to wrap up. I am going to make sure we have links to the book in the
Great.
show notes, but will you just tell us a little more about where can people find the book and if they want
Mhm.
to learn more from you, like what's the best way to follow your
Yeah.
work as well
Yeah,
as
yeah,
like
yeah.
who should be reaching out like to be like, "Nope, I'll read the book, that's fine, but I just want Renee's team to do it for me."
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So inclusive strategic planning for nonprofits. It is available for sale on Amazon now and also on the Ross Collective website. And yes, we also have a subscribe link on our site, and we send out our free newsletter twice a month about what we're learning and working on. So,
Excellent. Wonderful.
mhm.
Well, thank you. And do you have a favorite type of organization to work with?
Oh my gosh. You know what? I feel like each one, I don't know, like it's just the challenge and what happens and how people, I think the thing that intrigues me is we don't come in with the answers, right?
Right.
We don't come, and it's very humbling. I don't have your strategic plan, and so it's just like, wait, there's some part of me that is like, okay, I've done this process many times, but is it actually going to work? And then to see that it does,
Yeah.
and to see like people build it together, guided by us, and it's just super super exciting. So we've worked with all kinds of like education, social service, higher education, arts, many, many different kinds of organizations. And it's always fun. It's
I
always
love it.
fun.
I love it. Do you have the
Yeah.
book with you? Can we see it for those who are
Oh my
watching the
gosh.
video?
I I have personally have not received a copy. It is coming. Yeah.
We'll make sure,
Very soon.
folks can follow the
Okay.
link. It's always fun
Okay.
though. It's just something,
Mm.
literally like bringing a book into the world.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I no kidding. I'm like, I gave birth to a book. Yeah. Very
So,
recently.
yeah,
Yeah.
I will also put a plug for you, knowing authors, for everyone out there listening. Bringing a book into the world is such hard work. It's generous work. And one of the best things you can do for Renee and any author is to buy a copy on Amazon and leave a verified review for that book. It makes such a difference.
Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it because yes, that's absolutely true. Just, you have people that know you, I have people that know me, but there's a lot of people out there who don't. And for those people, they're going to be looking at the reviews and saying, what do people think about this book? And so yes, I am currently, that is my project that I am working on in
Is
this
getting
period, is
reviews.
really to get Amazon verified reviews exactly as you're describing.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, thank you, Renee, so much for being here. And thank you
Oh.
out there for listening. And give Renee a gift back. She's given the world the gift of her book. Give her the gift of a review. It will take you a lot less time than it took her to prepare the book.
Thank you, Sarah. So fun to speak.
Yes. And
Hmm.
until next time, everyone, I wish you all the best.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.